Thank you. Good morning. I appreciate the chance to join you today, and I apologize for my late arrival. We were having a veterans breakfast out at the National Guard headquarters in West Raleigh, and kind of a last gasp, I suppose, of the Veterans Day weekend. So I've rushed over here, and I'm happy to join you here today. I was telling Joanne Sanford, though, I really wish I could have heard the earlier panel. I'm back to Washington later today, and the lay of the land there, of course, is of interest to all of us. I can't tell you exactly what to predict, but I hope that we will at least get a budget together for the next fiscal year and do it and not wait until next year. We need to go ahead and get that done and then see what other points of agreement we can reach so that we can move the country forward. But it's a real pleasure to stop by here on the way to the airport, so to speak, and to speak with you, and also thank you and the organizers of this event for coming together on this critical topic. What's the future of our nation's energy policy? In the broadest terms, I suppose that's what you're addressing. And I think everybody knows this is a divisive issue in some respects. We know what the fate of more comprehensive approaches has been, and even more now would likely be. But I think it behooves us, given the urgency of the challenges we face, to explore what the possible areas of agreement are, how we can move the ball forward, what will move us toward energy independence and sustainability. How can we increase the use of alternative energy sources? How can we enhance our energy efficiency? How can we minimize the harmful byproducts of energy generation? All of those are important questions which shouldn't be, and I think don't need to be, totally partisan. I think we can find answers that, if they don't give us a total solution, at least move us forward. We all know, though, and we've got to acknowledge, I think, that climate change is a major factor in the equation. It's an extremely serious threat. And those who know this, those who can validate it in the scientific community and beyond, need to do so. I mean, it's a public obligation at this point to be clear that in this case, science, the overwhelming scientific evidence is not lying, that we do face as a planet a major challenge. I am sometimes asked what I think from the longer perspective of history we're going to look like, our era is going to look like. And my suspicion is that of all these issues that we're dealing with in this country and across the world right now, that what people are going to look back 100 years from now, 150 years from now, and say, what were they thinking? I believe that will be the issue that looms largest. What did they do about the signs of climate change, of the kind of tipping factors that are threatening, and what did they do about it, and how did my great-grandfather vote on this? You know, I don't think it's fanciful at all to imagine those kinds of questions being asked, just as we look back on the Civil War era, let's say, or other periods, and ask what the dominant issues of those days were. So, of course, it's a matter of higher temperatures, rising sea levels. It's also, as we all know, an economic challenge, a security challenge. All of that is becoming more and more clear. Scientists tell us that we must reduce emissions by roughly 80% by mid-century to avoid a dangerous climate tipping point. As the world's largest per capita emitter of greenhouse gases, we have a unique responsibility to work toward a comprehensive emissions solution that has to include a 21st century energy policy. We've got to find the political will to do that. I welcome the overnight news of President Obama and President Xi announcing that there is a bilateral agreement between our country and China with regards to greenhouse gas emissions. This is much more of this is what's going to be required, both on the part of our country and on the part of the international community. The president's called this our Sputnik moment. I'm barely old enough to remember what that means. I suspect many of you do know exactly what it means. In the midst of the Cold War in the 1950s, Russia launched Sputnik. That was an unprecedented achievement, and it was also a wake-up call for this country, to put it mildly. And President Eisenhower, the Democratic and Republican leaders of Congress, came together in the wake of Sputnik and invested in science education. The National Defense Education Act, that's telling, isn't it? That when this country first undertook federal support for public education in a serious way, it was called the National Defense Education Act. It didn't change the fact that education funding is mostly a state and local matter. And still, over 90% of education funding comes from state and local sources. But we did recognize at that moment the need for a targeted national effort to achieve a higher level of excellence in science education, engineering education in particular. And that's the way federal aid to education has worked, and that was the moment. President's saying we are at another such moment, and I'm inclined to agree. We've got to make some good decisions. The countries that work to address climate change, the countries that work to invest in clean energy, will be the countries that lead the 21st century global economy. We are not preeminent. Our country is not preeminent today in clean energy. We're at risk of falling behind, but I don't believe it's too late. I know the premise of this conference is it's not too late. We need to take up this tremendous challenge. So we need the right policies at the federal and state level. There's an opportunity here for cooperation despite our differences. Building a clean energy infrastructure is a winning proposition, driving economic growth, creating post-industrial manufacturing jobs. Whether you're in a red state or a blue state, that's going to be the case. We've got to do a better job of addressing some of the environmental concerns caused by traditional sources of energy. I believe that the President's rules recently issued for power plant operations, I think that's a positive step. I think we've got to lower the playing field in terms of tax breaks and other federal incentives, level the playing field among all types of energy. You notice I didn't say massive new tax breaks or subsidies for renewables. There are some incentives there that can help us make the transition. But by far, the most tax breaks and incentives that this country offers are aimed at oil and gas, at traditional extractive industries. So when I say level the playing field, I'm not giving you a formula for keeping expensive incentives in place forever. On the contrary, we all know, you've probably heard a lot about it today, solar energy fast approaching economic viability as a business proposition. And on the other side of the equation, the preferences enjoyed, the obsolete preferences enjoyed by the extractive industries are long overdue for reconsideration. Now, many of the renewable energy technologies are already available today. Others are still being developed and tested. Critical that we continue to invest in renewable energy research and put in place policies that develop and incentivize the production of clean, domestically produced, and affordable energy, as well as focusing on developing a smarter electric grid. You're spending a lot of time in this conference on the smart grid development, and I won't presume to add too much to that. We do know that 10% of all generation assets, 25% of distribution infrastructure are required less than 400 hours per year, just 5% of the time. So making efficient use of that grid is kind of an obvious path to take. If the grid was only 5% more efficient, the energy savings would equate to permanently eliminating fuel and GHG emissions from 53 million cars. So that should be a minimum target for improvement. Smart grid can help us maintain energy security and reliability in the case of outages. It can help us maintain electricity affordability. And it will ensure global competitiveness and boost the economy. transforming the grid has been compared in significance with building the interstate highway system. I think that's an apt comparison. We're especially proud of the role North Carolina State has played. They've been a major grantee, they've taken major initiatives in the development of smart grid technology. And that's indicative, I think, of a broader phenomenon. Private and public institutions in North Carolina are well suited to participate in this emerging clean energy economy. A lot of this research is conducted here in the Triangle. It's thrust North Carolina into a global leadership position in the energy technology industry. We're working here on everything from LED lighting to high-capacity batteries to gasoline additives to make engines more efficient. And this research is helping solve one of the most difficult challenges our country faces, how to use energy efficiently and eventually to achieve our goal of energy independence. I think a lot of our success stems from the fact that our state has long understood that pragmatic public policy and strategic cooperation between the public and private sectors can result in enormous economic benefits for everyone. Such public-private cooperation goes beyond the great work conducted in our university research laboratories. It also includes forward-thinking investments that our state has made in transportation, infrastructure, K-12 education. I would assume to most of us that lesson is obvious, that these foundation stones, these building blocks of a innovative economy, an economy that is at the cutting edge, that those have served us well. I regret to tell you it's been forgotten by some of my colleagues in Washington, and I must say our state government is backsliding in some ominous ways as well. So I'm not going to elaborate much on that. There is, everybody knows about the dysfunction in Congress, but I want to underscore that we have a lesson, I think, from our last 50 years here in North Carolina, a lesson that we need to absorb ourselves, but also something the nation can learn from, and that is that we don't get where we want to go by demonizing government. We certainly don't get where we want to go by being overly or totally reliant on government. But pragmatic policy does work. Public-private partnerships do work. And we better be attentive to what those public policy foundation stones are. They don't necessarily need to be the same into the indefinite future, but neither should we simply be ready to throw over the lessons of the last 50 years. We need to proceed very judiciously. Cooler heads hopefully will prevail. And, but I tell you, we're in a position in North Carolina to be at the front of the clean energy revolution. We're not coal country, never will be. We're not the oil patch, never will be. We can be at the forefront of the clean energy revolution. And there's enough good work underway now on the research fronts, on the manufacturing fronts, developing these new sources of energy, making sure that new energy technology is deployed statewide. We really are in a position to be in the forefront. So I would say to this conference, thank you for focusing on these matters. I encourage you to be vigilant in expressing your support for research funding, especially federal research funding that is under a lot of pressures right now. We need validators. We don't just need debates among politicians about ideological points of view. We need validators as to what is practical, what works, what has a payoff. And I think with that kind of support, that kind of seed money, if you will, from our government, that we're in a position to flourish and to lead. So let me pledge to you that I, as one of your federal representatives, will try to make sure that our federal laws and regulations allow the kind of flexibility and innovation that we see exemplified throughout this area. To promote common sense and sustainable policies that promote energy alternatives and address climate challenges, and that make certain that we keep in mind the importance of research and staying ahead of the curve in terms of new technologies internationally, things that we can be at the forefront of. Research, the right kind of research dollars, of course, can contribute vastly to that result. So we have a lot of work to do. I thank you for the service that you're performing in focusing on these things on behalf of a wider audience. I look forward to hearing about the results of this conference and also working with many of you on these matters in years ahead. Thank you very much.